Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about our 2022 project support programs. I'm Mackenzie Swinehart. I'm the Grants and Services Manager here at GCAC, and I will be your main contact through project support in 2022. We always like to start these workshops off with talking about our mission, our vision. And so our mission is to support and advance the arts and cultural fabric of Columbus. And our vision is a thriving Columbus where the arts matter to all of us. As we get to talking about this specific project support program, we want to talk a little bit about how GCAC is funded, because you're actually going to see some impacts of this later. So we receive funds currently from the City of Columbus and the Franklin County Board of Commissioners. And there's four primary funding sources. The first one is the City of Columbus Hotel Motel Tax, which is affectionately known as bed tax. So if you stay at a hotel here in the City of Columbus, you will see that there's some fees and taxes added to that. And we get a small percentage of that to give out in community grants for the arts. So that has been in place for a long time, since 1978. It's considered, bed tax is considered a best practice in funding for the arts across the country. So we're really grateful that the city has been committed to using this tax to fund the arts and cultural community for a very long time. You might remember a few years ago, we campaigned and worked on a new funding source so we could start to increase some of these awards and reach more folks. And that is the ticket fee that was added in 2019. So those are ticket fees that are added to for-profit tickets or tickets over $10 or tickets at venues over 400 folks. So if you're going to a small venue, you're buying a ticket that's $5, or you're going to a nonprofit, you're not going to have to pay that fee. But other than that, if you're going to like the Blue Jackets or big concert at the Shot, you're going to see that there's a new 5% fee on there. And all that money comes back to the arts for granting out to our arts organization and our artists here. There's, as part of that that ticket fee, Nationwide Arena has they get a chunk of that fee, and then we get the rest for arts and culture. So the chunk that they keep is for maintaining that facility, but only for events that happen at Nationwide. And then finally, as a result of that advocacy for the ticket fee, at the same time, the Franklin County Board of Commissioners said, hey, we want to be directly funding the arts, and we're going to allocate some funds towards that. One of the reasons we talk about how we're funded and where these dollars come from for you is that some of these things are impacted, like by the pandemic. So you might have guessed that from 2020 to 2021, there were fewer people staying in hotels because of less travel, and there was certainly almost a whole year period where people weren't selling tickets, especially for big events like huge concerts and sporting events. So we saw a little dip in that for a couple of years, and we're just hoping, just like all of you, that in 2022 we're going to see kind of our lives start to go back to normal, and we'll see a little bit of that increase. So you won't see a huge amount of increase in funding at this point, but fingers crossed in the future that those revenue sources will continue to rise. Everything we talk about today is going to be found on our website, gcac.org, and we're going to be under this grants, fellowships, and residencies tab, and we're going to be looking at guidelines. If we were in person and standing around talking, I would actually hand you a copy. You really need to go here, download the guidelines, take a look at them. They're going to really get you through the whole process, and they're going to cover everything that we go over today. So once you click on guidelines, we're going to be talking about project support right here. You'll see there's a little X on one. We haven't posted these guidelines yet, the 2022 guidelines, and there are a few things that are changing. So some things are going away, but most of what you count on is going to stay. So when we talk about project support, first we want to see who is eligible to apply for project support. So number one is you're a registered nonprofit And your primary culture is arts. Your primary mission is arts and culture. So if you're a nonprofit that does other great work, let's say social service work in our community, and you have, as part of your whole organization, a program that's an arts program, you would not qualify, unfortunately. So we're looking for organizations who, if I read your mission, I went to your website, it is like overwhelmingly arts and culture. So most of your programs are arts and culture. So that's the first folks who qualify. The other people who qualify to apply are individual artists or groups of artists that do not have a nonprofit status, but can partner with a nonprofit through a process we call fiscal sponsorship. And fiscal sponsors can be anyone who is a nonprofit. We recommend that it's an arts nonprofit or someone similar to your project, so that they really understand how to best help you and get you through the process. But they could be a non-arts nonprofit. They do have to be local, and by local we mean Central Ohio. So it can't be someone from Cleveland or Cincinnati or out of state. And we ask that they are a collaborating partner in some way. So they can't literally just pass through the money. They need to be helping you out, whether advising on the project, maybe they're providing a venue for you, that happens a lot. Maybe they're helping spread the word or market for you. Maybe they're even helping you with the grant process and grant writing. But we just want to know that that fiscal sponsor is involved in your success in some way. So then those are the two groups that are qualified to come in. And then what kinds of things qualify? So we're looking for primarily events and activities that take place here in the city of Columbus. If you remember from one of our previous slides, primary funding source is the city of Columbus. So when you're doing activities, if it's a one-time event or one-day festival, it needs to take place within the city of Columbus limits. So think about this. We have a lot of suburbs here, but those are not city of Columbus. So Westerville, Gahanna, Grandview, Hilliard, all of these places, wonderful places to live, Dublin, but they actually aren't the city of Columbus. And since the city taxes are our primary funding source, we are looking for projects that take place within the city limits. Now, if you're doing multiple events, so let's say like a series of events, and you have, let's say, 4 concerts coming up, we just require that at least 3 of them, or 75%, would take place in Columbus, because we know that sometimes you have to work with a venue outside of Columbus. So let's say you did 3 concerts or events here in the city of Columbus, and you're doing 1 in Worthington up at McConnell Arts Center, he would still qualify. Now, if you were doing 3 or all of them, McConnell or McCoy or the Abbey Theater in Dublin, you would not qualify. So if you haven't picked your venue, that might be something you want to consider. We also require that you demonstrate compensation to all the professional artists involved in the project, and compensation can vary. We know that some small projects, you're really just looking at a stipend for those artists, where maybe really big projects are paying a really substantial sum to those artists. So kind of just depending on the size of your project, we're going to want to see that you're providing at least some compensation to those artists, because we believe artists should be paid for their work and recognized. So that's something, as you're building your budget, just don't forget to compensate those professional artists. And then finally, the project that you're proposing out of all your events, it has to be open and promoted to the broad public. Now, that means it can be a free event, or it can be a ticketed event that has a cost. So either way, but as long as anyone from the broad public can come, it will be eligible. That's going to come up in just a minute when we talk about what's not eligible. So here are some things we cannot fund through this program. 1, fundraising events. So whether you're raising money for your own organization or you're raising money for another good cause, we cannot fund fundraising events. So if you are doing, let's say, a season of shows, like your theater group, you're doing a whole season of 6 shows, but one is like a gala or a fundraising event, you would essentially just leave that off. So you wouldn't include that in your expenses or your plan or what you're proposing to us. So we can't fund fundraising events, even if it's for an outside good cause. Right now, we cannot fund temporary or permanent public art. We love public art. In fact, we love most things on this what we do not fund list, but because of limitations, we have to have a narrow focus. And right now we don't have enough to go around to fund public art. So if you're planning a mural or sculpture, you cannot come in for projects, unfortunately. The next thing we don't fund that we also love is educational programs or youth programs. So we will fund events and activities that are open to the broad public and might appeal to, let's say, families that also have children. But if it's specifically a youth program, let's just say, for example, it's an after-school program working with youth in a dance capacity. So that, if you think about that, that's not open to the broad public. That's really specific. Only the people who are participating in that after school program can come. So Joe down the street who can't actually just come and participate in this program. So if it's primarily educational, even if it's for adults, which includes workshops. So let's say you wanted to come and do a series of workshops for artists, that would not qualify. Or youth programs. If the primary performers are youth, you don't have professional performers that are going to be compensated, that would not qualify. Now, let's just say you're putting on a performance that has some youth performers, like good example that everybody knows is the Nutcracker, usually has adult professional paid dancers and youth dancers, that would qualify. But if it was primarily youth or children performers, that would not qualify. Arts therapy programs. So we are looking at programs again that are wonderful. So let's say you are running a visual arts program that's working with veterans with PTSD. That's a great use of your time and a wonderful program. It just didn't qualify because, again, it's for those specific veterans. It's not open to everyone. It's educational, probably got some workshop-y kind of things in there. Now, however, if you were working with veterans who were professional artists, so they were at a level where they're being compensated, recognized from their work, and you were putting on a exhibition that was open to the broad public that just happened to feature works by veterans, that would be eligible. Then the next thing we have is a little vague, but it says projects that do not demonstrate a significant benefit to the broad public. What we mean by that is it going to attract, folks from kind of a broad amount of the public, instead of, let's say, I am just an artist and I want to invite all of my friends to come to an event that I'm hosting at a park, and I don't plan to advertise it really much. I don't have a mailing list. I don't really have a plan to get it out to the public and benefit anyone in the community who'd want to come to it. So every once in a while this pops up if you're really just drawing your own circle. We want to make sure you have a plan to really bring in anybody who could benefit from this from the broad public. And then finally, we cannot fund projects that primarily feature, support, or fund just one artist. So you're going to want to think about how are we involving a lot of artists or multiple artists in this project. So it can't just be about one single artist. All right, so that's the nitty-gritty of eligibility. So by now you should be thinking okay, am I eligible? Am I a nonprofit or group or individual artist that is going to work with a fiscal sponsor? And does the project I'm thinking qualify and doesn't hit one of those do not fund bullets? So primarily we're looking for performances, exhibitions, festivals or one-time events that arts are at the core, and series or seasons of artistic programming. So we have seen lots of different projects that come in through here. So I've seen, a weekend of dance performances. I've seen a whole series, a whole season of theater performances. So if you're a theater that's saying, okay, I'm going to run our 2022 season or 2022-23 season, we're running 6 shows of a theater, that would qualify. We have seen arts festivals. So I want to put on a 1-day or 2-day arts festival over the summer it's going to feature maybe multidisciplinary artists, or maybe you're like, hey, I really want to do an arts festival that's really focused on literary artists, like exclusively. We're going to have readings and other things that would qualify. And then one-time events. So if you just have like got a one night or one day event and you've got a really great idea, that's welcome too. So everyone, this is the big question. How much can I get? So project support, events, festival, and series, you can get up to $20,000. However, one of the things I noticed last year is that everybody thought they were going to get $20,000. That unfortunately is not the case. Very rarely are people eligible for that full amount. So this year we just noted that most people who are coming in for this and most awards are going to be in that $3,000 to $10,000 range, because your award is going to be based on, first of all, your project budget. So only very, 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 very large project budgets are going to be eligible for that full $20,000. And then once we determine what you're eligible for, we are going to apply an application score from the committee. So we'll talk a little bit later about the rubric and how that's scored. But essentially, if your project is smaller, you're probably not going to see that $20,000 award. And I like to note that we never fully fund one project. So if you think like, hey, I want to run this one-day festival and it's going to cost me $20,000, you're going to have to think about what are the other funding sources. Are you going to have sponsors? Are you going to sell merchandise or something else? You're going to do a GoFundMe, etc., so that you can know, how are we going to cover what the Arts Council doesn't. So you really can't count on that full amount. It's going to be a partial award, and again, for most of the folks coming in, we're looking at $3,000 to $10,000, so not that full $20,000. One of the things that we do that's going to help you out to support you through this process is if you're brand new, meaning you haven't ever gotten project support. So if you've gotten other awards from us, you're still new into project support. We do, one, require that you either request what we call a draft review or a guidance call. Now, these are essentially there to help you get through the process. They're due 2 weeks before the deadline. So we're going to talk about deadlines in just a minute. But essentially, you're going to request, you're going to fill out as much as you can in the application. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the more you fill out, the better feedback we can give you. And you're going to request a draft review or guidance call 2 weeks before. The difference between draft review and guidance call is draft reviews, you press a button, we read it, and we're going to type an email response like, hey, this is looking great. Question 1, could you expand more on this part? Question 2, this is interesting. What about this? We'll ask some questions to guide you through the process. Guidance calls are the same thing. We read your application in advance. We have some notes for you, but we do it on a phone or a Zoom call so that you can have verbal feedback. So it's essentially, do you want written feedback? You'll get a draft review. If you want to talk to somebody and go kind of back and forth with a verbal feedback, request a guidance call. You have to do this if you're a new applicant. If you don't do this and you're a new applicant, you're going to be automatically declined and there's nothing we can do about it. So make sure that you write down that 2 week before the deadline mark if you're a new applicant and you request that. If you're a returning applicant, like you've been with us in this process before, we can do draft reviews or guidance calls for you, but only if you haven't received a grant in a while, so in the past 2 or 3 years. So if the last time you got a project support grant was 2018, you can request a draft review because enough things might have changed that you want that support. Or if you scored 14 or under on previous year's application. So if you're getting a perfect score every year or close to a perfect score, this service is no longer available to you because you've already got this. So the dates and process, we're going to have, just like last year, 2 rounds, so 2 different deadlines. We've got February 15th and August 15th, which means if you need to do that draft review or guidance call or you want to, you're going to backdate 2 weeks. So we're looking at February 1st or August 1st for those. And you have to get, we always, all of our deadlines, including draft reviews, are at 5 p.m. So not midnight. you mark your calendar for 5 p.m. And I always recommend, just like in school, try to get things in a little early. For whatever reason, on the application due date is like going to be the day that your internet goes out or there's some problem in the system. So don't wait till the last minute. Try to get it in a little early if you can, and just note that all of our deadlines are at 5 p.m. So what we will do if you're a new applicant, we're going to have an introductory meeting with you on Zoom. And this meeting is really just to get to know you, to hear a little bit more about your project, to tell you about our process and what you can expect from project support, and all the next steps. So they're really fun and interesting. It's usually with a staff member, myself or someone else, and a board member. At least one of our GCAC board members will be on. And it's a really great time for them to learn about your organization. If you're a continuing project support grantee, you've gotten a grant with us before, or especially recently, we're actually not meeting anymore. We're going to see you kind of after the fact. So you just get to submit your application, sit back and wait, and you'll find out for the first round by the end of March, for the second round by the end of September. So you don't really have that long to wait, a little bit over a month, about a month and a half. Then, as always, final reports are going to be the wrap up. This is how I spent the money. This is what went well with the project, what didn't go well, and all the other documentation that we request. And this will be different due dates depending on when your project takes place. So when you submit the application, you're going to give us project start and end date based on the event dates. And so if your last event is, on this date, it's your project final report is going to be due 30 days later. All right, we're going to get into the system a little bit, and then we'll talk about the details of the application within the system. So we've got the application system is at gcac.smartsimple.com. You can directly access it here, or if you're on our website, gcac.org, and you go under grants, fellowships, and residencies, you can see that it says our grants database. You can connect through there. If you have never, ever had an account with us, you'll need to register, and it's going to ask you if you're an individual or you're a nonprofit. Now, if you're a group that you're like, hey, we're not a nonprofit yet, or we've got an LLC, you're still going to apply as an individual, because the system, if you don't have a certified 501c3 EIN, employee identification number, it's not going to let you register as a nonprofit. So there's only 2 types in our system. You're either an individual or you're a nonprofit. So if you're like, hey, we kind of have a business, you should come in, your primary person should come in as an individual. If you've been with us a long time, you know how to log in. And if you can't get in, always hit forgot password first. And if you still have trouble, you can give us a call and we'll get you set up. Once you get in, you're going to see your dashboard here. On the left-hand side, you'll see any funding opportunities that are available to you. And then over here on the right, you're going to see any applications you started. So if you started, you can start, save, draft as you go, and then come back later if you just want to do bits and pieces at a time. You'll see it goes from in progress, your draft, to submitted, and it will sit there and submitted for a long time until you either get the yay or the nay. We hope everyone gets that yay. You'll go to approved. Closed means that the application was approved. Then you did everything you needed to do, including that final report, and we've closed it out. And it's just now going to be a record for you long-term in the system. Any applications that are declined, unfortunately, will be here, or rescinded, meaning if you applied and for whatever reason you cannot do the project and we need to rescind those funds, that will be there. And then if you, let's say you were like, hey, I got an interesting project, but you're not sure about the time frame, you might start an application for the first round and then just decide not to submit it because you're not ready. We're actually going to keep that application for you right here in unsubmitted so that you can always refer to it later. We can also, if you've started one in one round, but don't submit, we can roll it over to another round on request. So you can just say, hey, I did about half my application, same project, can you roll it over to the next round? We'd be happy to do that for you. Then once you're awarded, everything that we need from you will be down here in this requires attention section. So there'll be a grant agreement to sign. That's the contract that just says what we're giving you, what we expect from you. then your final report will be under the Reports tab. While you're here, we want you to, every time you log in, or at least once a year, go up to the upper right-hand corner where it says your name. It says Sally Smith Test here, but at home it'll say your name. And we want you to update your personal profile and your organization profile. So your personal profile is how to get in touch with you, the primary contact. Your org profile, if you're a nonprofit, will have all the other things that we want to know about your nonprofit. It's really important to keep this up to date because we use that as your main contact information. So once you've put apply now for project support, events, series, and festivals, you're going to come in and you're going to see an application that looks something like this with a few different tabs. The overview will just have some very basic details, like we're going to ask about that, your project dates, a little bit about your overview of the project, and a few other things. We're also going to ask you if it's your first time applying for project support. So again, if you've gotten another grant, but you've never gotten project support, then yes, it's your first time applying for project support. That's really important so that we can make sure we get those interviews in, make sure you get the draft review, etc. The next thing that you're going to see right here is the narrative. So that's the fill in the blank answer questions. And the majority of this is broken into two categories. One is community engagement and commitment to IDEA, which is inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So there's going to be 3 questions related to community engagement, commitment to IDEA, and they're going to be related to your audience. So who are you trying to reach? Who do you think is going to attend this event or project? How are you going to reach them? How are you engaging with the community? And how are you showing your commitment to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access? Those 3 questions are going to actually impact your score. So, you know, how you're engaging with the community and you're showing your commitment to IDEA is going to be worth 8 points. The next couple of questions are going to be about your artistic plan. So it's going to say things like, what's unique about what you're proposing? How is it different than what other folks are doing in the community? How do you demonstrate your artistic excellence? And then we're also going to ask you about how you are engaging with local artists or professional artists. It could be some out of town and some local, and how you compensate them. So if you remember, we require that you compensate all professional artists. And so instead of just saying, yeah, we compensate everyone, we're actually going to ask you to give a range. So you can say, you know, we pay all of our directors $500 and all of our actors $100. Or you can say, you know, everyone in our professional staff is paid between, you know, a small stipend between $50 and $100. So kind of just depending on how many people you're hiring, you might want to give that broad range of actual dollars so we can see that translate to your budget. So we don't want you to be vague. Be as specific as you can at the application time and give us real dollars. Then we're going to ask just a few questions about how you're going to manage the project and your plans for that. And we're going to take a deep dive into your financials. So that's going to be the budget you provide and then any org financials, and that's going to be worth up to 7 points. So you're looking at an overall score of 20 points. And if you get a perfect score, which is really rare, so don't feel bad if you don't get a perfect score, you will get 100% of your max award amount. So not 100% of 20,000, but whatever your max award amount is. And that's based internally on your budget. And it goes on down a little percentage points down a little ways. So you want to score well. We're not going to be looking hard at your grammar or how well you write. We're really just looking at the heart of your project and the content of what you're presenting to our community. So after you get through the narrative questions, and these are all found in the guidelines. So if you're like, I want to work offline, or I'm working with a group and you want to work in a Word document or Google Drive, you can just grab the guidelines, and every question that we ask in the online system, we put in the guidelines. So nothing is different between those. You can always start whenever you have the guidelines in hand. The next thing that we ask, and this started in 2021, this last year, is that we're going to ask everyone who's an organization to provide us with some demographic data. If you're watching this right now and you've never done this before, I recommend you start here, because we're going to ask you to collect demographic data from your board and your staff, any full-time or part-time staff. So if you're just hiring an artist one time, or, you know, for one specific performance, you don't have to include them. And we're looking for folks who are with you year round. So we're going to give some explanations why we see that the data collection is an essential tool to our commitment to diversity, equity, and access. And we wanted you to see everyone kind of reflecting on who is making decisions at your organization, at your board, and your staff level. So we give actually a couple of links here to help you. The first one, the GuideStar link, which is what we model this survey off of, is how to collect and share this data. And it includes a sample survey, which asks exactly these questions. So you literally don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can copy and paste that survey and use that for your board and staff. Now, what we ask that you don't guess and you always ask. So you might just assume, just, you know, on this call that my gender identity is female because I present as female. And it turns out it is. So you would be right. But if you didn't ask me, maybe I actually identify as non-binary. And so we don't want you to guess. We want you to always ask through survey. We recommend that you ask anonymously. So you give out 13 surveys digitally or by paper and try to get 13 surveys back instead of naming, you know, putting Mackenzie's name at the top of this survey so that people can be as honest as they want to be. And that if you don't use the sample survey, that you always include a section that says, I prefer not to answer or I decline to state. So let's say I feel really comfortable sharing my gender identity with you, but I don't feel comfortable sharing whether I self-identify as a person with a disability. So every question that you ask should have the fill in the blank answers that exist here, but they also should have a prefer not to answer. So some folks might prefer not to answer all the questions, and that's okay. And some folks are gonna say, I'm comfortable answering some of these questions and I'm not comfortable answering others. And then just tell your staff and board how you're gonna use this. You can say, hey, we're gonna use this as part of our grant writing process. We're also gonna use this, you know, as we're looking for new board members, maybe. And then just make sure you tell them how you're going to respect their confidentiality. So that's really important. So you'll have to fill that out. Now, if you are an individual artist or from a group of artists who are applying with a fiscal sponsor, you will leave this blank. You'll actually put zeros all the way down because you don't have a board or staff because you're not a nonprofit. So that's just how to do that data collection. And we recommend, again, if you've never ever surveyed your board, to start now. All right, so now onto the budget. So if you see in these top tabs, there's going to be a budget tab for you, and it's going to pop out where you can fill in these blanks. The top section is going to be all about your revenue or your income. So we're going to see under revenue, we're going to look for your earned income. So we're talking about things that you sell, like tickets, merchandise, etc. And then under support, we're going to look for your contributed income. So other grants, corporate sponsors, donors, etc. We do want you to add GCAC funding, and you can put like a rough amount of what you're hoping for from us. Again, probably not that full 20,000, but you can always just put a rough amount. So we're kind of seeing, you know, what you're planning for, you know, how much you think you're going to get from ticket sales versus donations versus from us, etc. So those are going to be your income side. There's going to be an in-kind section. So don't include in-kind in your income or your expenses because in-kind is just standalone on this budget. And you can say, hey, we've got a printer who's going to donate all of our t-shirts and they're worth $5,000. So we can see other community support, or have a marketing professional who's donating their services. And that's a really great way to show the committee, hey, there's other ways that we're getting support for this event or this festival without it being in cash. And finally, you have a huge expense section, and it's broken up into a few sections, and you have you know, put things in the best section that you can find. And again, just do your best with estimating if you don't know exactly. So, you know, we'll want to see the total of what you're paying to artists, like, because we are looking for you to pay artists. You're paying other support staff. We're going to look for venue expenses. marketing expenses. And I always say, if you've never done a budget for us, I always just start with, I just take a piece of paper and I write down everything I think it's going to cost me to put on this event. So do keep it as project support specific as you can. So if I'm an organization who has activities year round, but I'm only asking for my one day or festival or event, all of the expenses should be related to that one day festival event, should not be related to my year round expenses. On the flip side, if I'm an organization, let's say I am a dance company that runs a series of professional dance performances from September to May, and that's pretty much everything I do as an organization, then most of my budget is going to be everything I spend. But if I'm a dance company that does, a series of professional performances from September to May, but I also run a dance school, you should be excluding all the dance school expenses because it's not related to that professional performances that you're pitching. So I would say, if you have questions on budget, reach out to us and say, can I include this? Can I not include this? And to try not to include anything that wouldn't qualify. Then finally, we have a little upload section. This is anything that you're going to attach or upload to the application. For nonprofits, we're going to ask you a little bit for your most current financial profit and loss statement. So we're looking for, kind of your income and expense statement or profit and loss, what's going on with your organization this year, and current with year to date. So depending on when your fiscal year starts, we're going to want to see just the most current. If your fiscal year starts in January and you're submitting in February, maybe you haven't even reconciled January, you can submit last year. It should not be blank what you submit. So if you're, again, on a calendar fiscal year starting in January and you're coming to that first round with a February deadline, you can submit last year so we can kind of get a better sense of your organization as a whole. We're going to ask you for a staff list and a couple other things, but there's not too many uploads for this program. They're all in the guidelines though. If you're one of those folks who are new to project support, or you want a little extra feedback and reviews for project support, you don't forget 2 weeks before those deadlines, you will request this. And how you request it is you actually press one of the buttons at the bottom. One says request draft review. That's the written feedback, or request guidance call. That's the verbal feedback. And it's going to notify us, hey, this person wants feedback. It usually takes us about a week. So if you request a draft review, give us a little time to get through them. We do them as they come in. If you request a guidance call, we'll email you right away to set a time to have that call or Zoom meeting. And once you've made it 2 weeks past the deadline, so if it's only a week before the deadline, these buttons will disappear and you can't request those anymore. So just make sure you are required, so first time applicant, to do a draft review or guidance call that you set on your calendar, got to finish this and press one of these buttons 2 weeks before the deadline. Then on the left-hand side of your application, you'll see that there's a section that says notes. This is a way you can reach out to us. You can reach out to us by phone or email or notes through the system. So we don't care how you want to reach out to us, whatever is easiest for you. One of the nice things about doing it in the system is that record stays in the system forever. So if you have multiple people working on your application, they can all see those notes back and forth. So like this one is from your point of view, it says note to council, and that sends a note here to us. And then ours says note to applicant, and it will have the running dialogue of what we said back and forth. So you don't have to track it down in your email. It also will stay there for future years. So if you're like, gosh, I had this question last year, but I don't remember the answer, you can always go back and look at that. So it's just one of many ways you can reach out to us, but any way you feel like you're welcome to contact. And then if you're working primarily with a fiscal sponsor, but also if you're working with an outside grant writer, so it's somebody who you don't want permanent access to your account, but they're just helping you with this one application, you can press the invite grant writer or fiscal sponsor button, add their name and email address. If it's a grant writer, so again, just someone helping on this one application, not a permanent person, part of your org, you can just invite them. You can also remove them if later you decide like, okay, we're done with their portion or whatever. But if you're an individual or group of artists that is working with a fiscal sponsor, the application will not let you submit until you've invited that fiscal sponsor and they've accepted the invitation. So you're going to click on this button, invite grant writer or fiscal sponsor, as soon as you basically have locked down who your fiscal sponsor is. And it's going to ask for your contact person at that org, their name and email address, and you're going to send them an invite. The fiscal sponsor person at the org is going to get an email that just says, hey, so-and-so asked you to be the fiscal sponsor. Click this link, and they say yes or no. They will also then have access to your application so they can give you feedback or advice if they're helping with the grant process. So it's really important. Don't wait till the last minute, because if you wait till right before 5 p.m. on the deadline to invite your fiscal sponsor, they might be away from their desk or not have time to accept it, and then the application will not let you submit. So it's really important. Get your fiscal sponsor lined up and then get them invited to that application. So this is what it looks like. It'll pop up. You're going to put in their first and last name, their email, and then you're going to pick if they're a grant writer or fiscal sponsor. And it's important that you pick the right one. So make sure, if it's a grant writer, it's just somebody helping you write the application. Fiscal sponsor is that person that is going to work with you as an artist or group of artists and is going to represent as an organization. And you can always remove them by hitting this little X, and you can save it, but we want to make sure you sent that invite and you see that the fiscal sponsor status is invited. Once they accept, the status will say accepted. All right, so a few of you might be on here and have been with us for a while and said, okay, I remember when we had project support tier A and tier B, and then I remember we moved from project support A and B to annual seasons and events, festivals, short series. Hey, why is there only one project support type? And I'll tell you why. One, there is, and going forward, starting in 2022, we're gonna have one type of project support, and that's events, festivals, and series. And that's gonna incorporate a lot of different projects, including full seasons as well. However, we do have a new program that we're not going to cover in this webinar because it's so different that we are going to need a separate webinar for it. So, but I know some of you are going to be like, hey, where's annual seasons? That's what I got last year or what I've gotten in the past. So annual seasons is discontinued. It's replaced by a program called general support. It's very similar to our operating support program that you may have seen for our larger organizations, but general support is essentially there to provide stable income in an unrestricted fashion, meaning it doesn't have to be restricted to a project. It can be used by your organization however you need for our small and mid-sized arts organizations who are putting on full activities or full season for the public. So this is really similar to annual seasons. It's just going to be a little different. Because we look at general support as giving you a long time commitment to these organizations, you still have to apply every year, but we're going to work with you year by year. That folks who are going to be with us for a while, like our operating support folks, we're going to ask you to, one, if you're like, hey, that I think that means me, first read the general support guidelines. It's going to ask you a few things about your organization just to make sure you qualify. And then this first year, anytime you're going to come into this program, so let's say this year you don't come into general support, but next year you want to, we're going to have you pre-qualify. And to pre-qualify, we're going to ask you for just really for some financial documents to kind of see if we can get you in here. We need you to be at a certain level with your financial management. It's really clean profit and loss statements and at least one balance sheet. So there are a few things we're going to need to coach you on and get you through that to pre-qualify. So we actually have a separate webinar called the General Support Financial Pre-Qualification webinar that's going to talk to you about what you need to do. This program, again, is going to be a wonderful program for our small and mid-sized arts organizations who are doing a full season. So if you do like a one-time event or a festival, you would not qualify. But if you're a group that does events year-round or has a full suite of exhibits or performances, this might be something you'll be interested in. And we'll will be supporting you as you're going through this new process from here on out. So again, we're not going to go into real detail here, but pick up those general support guidelines. Mark on your calendar to pre-qualify by March 1st. This program is only have a deadline once a year, so we're going to fund it once a year. And then if you're like, hey, I think this is a good fit for us, watch that general support pre-qualification webinar, and we'll get you through everything that you need to submit for your pre-qualification. Finally, we like to wrap these up by showing you how to get off our newsletter. Our newsletter is really geared towards artists and our small and mid-sized arts organizations. We have other opportunities, outside grant opportunities, calls to artists, announcements if we ever have new grant programs or other things that are going on here at GCAC. And we highly recommend you sign up for that. So it's under our workshops and resources, opportunities for artists, and our newsletter right here. And you can also email us and we'd be happy to add you. Finally, we're not going to have a Q&A because this is not live. We're pre-recording this. I am, again, Mackenzie Swinehart. I'm the Grants and Services Manager. I just want to note I'm going to be on leave, maternity leave, until February 14th, Valentine's Day next year. So while I'm out, Allison Barrett is going to be your main project support and general support contact, but I'll be here next year to guide you through the whole process. If you email me, it's going to be forwarded to Allison. So if you forget and email me, that's okay. If you call me, it's also going to be forwarded. So you'll get somebody here on the team. I just want you to know that I'm coming back and I can't wait to work with you next year. But that's why we're pre-recording this, is I won't be here to do your workshops in January. So we just wanted you to have this early on to get you through the process. Allison will be there doing your draft reviews and being the person to answer any questions while I'm out, but I'll see you next year. Thanks for joining us today, and feel free to shoot us any questions at any time.